Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 58. And this is one question. This is all about one question that you need to ask yourself when life seems too hard. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is I heard a quote I was listening to. It was like a little reel clip by Priscilla Shire. If you don't know who she is, you've got to look her up. She's an incredible Bible teacher. She has incredible messages. She goes around and talks. I would love to see her in person one day. But she said something on this particular clip, and I just thought, oh my goodness, it was funny, but it was also to me very profound. She said, life is out there lifing. And I thought, oh my goodness, what do you do when life is out there lifing? Just like I've heard it a few years ago, somebody said, sometimes people are just too peoply, and that made me laugh because I knew exactly what they're saying. I mean, it sounds kind of elementary when you hear, life is out there lifing, or people are just too peoply. Like, well, of course they are, but there is a lot to that. There's a lot to unpack in that. And I just wanted to, I felt like I needed to talk about that because what do you do? How do you react when life is out there lifing? Do you give yourself grace on those days? And by grace, I mean the patience. Like when you have those days where you just walk in the door and you're like, I cannot handle anymore. I didn't handle today well. Or maybe you handled everything well, but you just felt like everything was coming down on you. You know, just those days where life seems like it is too much, people are too peoply, and you just get tired of facing it. You just walk in the door and you're like, I'm just done with it. I try to show up with a good mindset. Maybe you're doing all the things. Maybe you're listening to positive podcasts. You're more in tune with what music are you listening to? What movies are you allowing yourself to watch? And you're trying to do all these things. You're trying to create a growth mindset, leaning into God more. And you're like, and dang it, if these days don't just keep happening, if life just keeps on life, and if people just keep being peoply, like it, I know that what I'm doing doesn't mean they'll change, but there are just some days I want to break. What do you do in those moments, and why it's important to give yourself grace? And I'm going to back up a little bit. So those of you listening, or if you're watching, thank you for tuning in. This is episode 58. I'm glad you're here. I'm always honored when people watch or listen. And then it also, don't forget to leave me a review, because, or just, it's amazing when people reach out to me and tell me that, what I had to say, helped them out, because that's why I'm doing this. I never thought I'd do a podcast. I say that a lot on here. I'm just saying life's kind of funny that way. So thank you for tuning in wherever you're tuning in from. I'm so grateful that you're here. So back to the topic though, one question that you have to ask yourself when life seems too hard, when life is just out there lifing. And guess what? Life is going to be out there lifing every day. I mean, and there's some days it just doesn't seem to really hit us that hard, or maybe the seriousness of it isn't there. And then we have days where it just feels like every time we turn around, it's just more of life. As they say, life is what happens when you make plans. You make all these plans, you do all these things, and then life just kind of steps in. But when you're having those days and you're just tired of facing it, when you're, like I said, you feel like I'm doing all the right things, a lot of us, our go-to, especially if we are trying to do better, we're trying to create a healthier mindset, do all the things, we allow shame to come in. We start the shame game or the condemnation game, where it's like, okay, I should be doing better than this. Like, what's wrong with me that I'm allowing a bad day to just make me unravel? Or maybe it's not a bad day. Maybe it's a series of days. Maybe you've had just a week that you would just say like, okay, I don't know what that was about. And I've been there too. But layering it with shame is definitely not going to get you anywhere. For one, you have got to give yourself the grace of feeling what you feel. If you know that it's been a rough time for you, whether it be just 24 hours of a rough time, 8 hours, or maybe a whole week or month's worth, and you're starting to be like, I should be handling this better. I don't know why I'm allowing this to get to me. Well, I'm going to tell you what, without shame being there, without shame being present and shaming yourself, it's already gotten to you. You already feel what you feel. So that's already there. That's already in the recipe. But when you purposely choose shame, now you're layering it with an unnecessary emotion. You're layering it with something that's on you. And what I mean by that is like, okay, don't shame yourself. Instead, give yourself grace for just feeling like, okay, I'm just I don't really want to I don't want to walk out the door and show up at work or be around people anymore. I'm kind of sick of it. And you notice that the attitude may not be the best attitude that you want to put out there. Okay, so please give yourself that grace. Like, okay, of course, it's been a rough day or it's been a rough week. Of course you feel this way. You're doing all the things to get a better mindset, or maybe you're just started this journey, whatever it may be, and then here we are. Well, that's life. And what I mean by that is you're going to have, no matter how strong of a mindset you have, no matter how long you listen to all the good things, really do all the work, there's going to be days that just feel like they knock you off your feet. And I'm telling you that from my own personal experience. Here I am, a life coach, and I've been coaching for women for 2 years now, and I've been life coached myself for 3 years. And I still have those days where I don't like who I am at the end of the day. The way I showed up to the day, maybe it was a hard day and I allowed it to make me act a certain way that I just wasn't very proud of. Or maybe I was fine during the day, but to the people I love the most, my loved ones, for me, my husband and my children, my family, all that, I just wasn't showing up like the way I wanted to. And then the shame sets in. It's like, you know what? We're just going to take shame off. There is no shame and having the bad days and showing up as somebody you're not very proud of just feeling like life is just lifing a little too much. I don't like it. So let's take shame off and just realize you already feel what you feel, and to give yourself the grace. Okay. So you really didn't quite act how you wanted. No more shame in this, because shame's going to keep you locked into the cycle. That is one thing the enemy loves to do, is keep you locked in negative cycles. And that's how clever he is. Like I say, he's not the smartest entity, being, whatever, but he is clever, and he knows that if we get that shame, if we layer those emotions with shame, then what ends up happening is we never get out of that cycle, because like, oh, you should know better by now. Or like why would you allow that to bother you so much? I mean, even though that seems like a small, simple thought, it's really not so small, and it's really not so simple, because it locks us into a vicious negative cycle. So that's why it's so important to get shame out of there. Like, there's no shame. Instead, we're just going to give ourselves grace. Okay. And be like, okay, so you feel how you feel. You had a bad day. You didn't act the way you really wanted. Or maybe you're at home now and you don't really want to hide out from the world, but you feel like you kind of are, whatever it may be. Right. Now, um, the one question that now I'm going to get to, you're like, okay, Carrie, you said, like, what is one question you have to ask yourself when life seems too hard? And this is something that I learned in coaching. And I often use in my one-on-one coaching. I also use it in the group coaching, but it is a very powerful tool. And it's a very powerful question: is what would the wisest and best version of yourself tell you in this moment? So when you're having those moments full of doubt, when you're like, I'm kind of tired of things, I'm ready for it. Just, I'm tired of showing up the way I'm showing up. And, bad day after bad day just seems to kind of keep rolling out. And once again, here I am, you know, oh, I don't think I can do this. Like all this stuff. I want you to ask yourself, what would the wisest and the best, not perfect, but the best version of yourself tell you in this moment? And you can sit here and think, okay, so if the wisest and best version of myself is in the future, let's say future you could somehow hop in their DeLorean and travel back and appear in front of you and say, what would that version of you say? And so the reason I want you to ask yourself is because what that allows you to do is it allows you to realize you already have an answer for it. You already know how to approach these hard days. You already know, when you've allowed the hard days to kind of morph you into a version of yourself you're not very proud of, and we've all been there. There's a version of yourself that knows how to get out of it, that knows what to do and how to create safety within. And I just actually coached um, a lady from my group coaching on this particular thing, how to create internal safety that we do often. Like when we seek out God and his wisdom, we will find answers and we will know the answers and we will know how to handle these situations. When, let's say, you work at a toxic workplace, there's that word toxic again, but let's say every day it's so hard to show up because maybe just the amount of negative attitudes, it's just overwhelming. And you can't change their attitudes, but you somehow feel the effects on you. And it does, it rubs off. It can be very easily rubbed off. What I would, that's a good thing to ask yourself. What would the wisest and best version of myself tell me to do in this situation? And that's creating the internal safety. That is also leaning into God. What would God tell you to do in these situations? And lean into him for the wisdom and guidance. So, what would the wisest and best version of yourself tell you to do in this moment when you just feel like life is just out there, life and too much, and I'm just kind of wanting to hide out? What would you say to yourself? And I want you to write it down. So if you don't have a pen and paper handy, if you're in the car or whatever, when you get home, what would the wisest and best version of myself say about this particular situation? And what you'll find is you'll find answers. You'll find that you already had the answer. You just needed to kind of get it out there. You'll find, and maybe it will lead you to seek that out and realize that, okay, I know that even though it's been a series of hard days or whatever situation you're facing just seems like too much of a Goliath, that you know what you can do. All right. There is, and if you're looking for something, I will tell you, there is, and if you feel like, man, like it's just been very hard lately, and I've been getting more down and more down about things that are just coming my way out of my control. There's a incredible Bible study that I did a few years ago. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And it's by Priscilla Shire, the lady that I quoted at the beginning of this, and it is called The Armor of God. And even though it does have a video series that goes with it, you can buy the book and read it along in the Bible. And in the book, the Bible study, it has a lot of questions you can answer. But the core of what she teaches in that, and if you're not even able to access the videos, I did it without the videos and I got a lot out of it. Even though there are some videos posted online for free, but most of them, it's like a thing they want you to buy separately. But whatever, with all that being said, I got a lot out of it just from the book and just from reading in the Bible, because the Bible is the ultimate wisdom. And that's what Bible studies help guide us back to the Bible, to go back to the ultimate source of wisdom to find the answers. And in this particular topic, it was like, you may have heard of what the armor of God is. You always pray like, oh, I need the breastplate of salvation, the belt of truth, things like that. But if you're not familiar with it, you could read about what the armor of God is. It talks about it in the Bible, how to set yourself up in such a way that you are okay, that you can prepare yourself for whatever the enemy might throw at you. And that would be the armor of God. And so she talks about how to, see the areas of your life that the enemy is attacking or might, could easily attack, and then how to be ready when he does. Because it's not if he comes after you, it's when he comes after you, right? And how to prepare yourself in a godly way with peace and wisdom for whatever may come your way. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. It's called The Armor of God by Priscilla Shire. It's really one of the best Bible studies that I've done. So if you need something to help you dive down this road a little bit more. But bottom line of today's episode, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I just really felt like I've noticed this theme coming up recently in coaching. It's even my own personal life. Like when life feels like it's just life and too much, and you just kind of find yourself wanting to hide out. What would the best and wisest version of yourself tell you? What advice would it give you? What advice would the future version of yourself give you, this best and wisest version who's already experienced all the life and learned? I mean, you think about it. Think about yourself or, just a few years ago, maybe something, or even 20 years ago, depending on your age. If you could talk to your teenage self if you could go back and talk to your 16-year-old self, what would you say? You know, you think about it. I've seen this on Facebook posts. What would you tell your younger self? And the questions are always so sweet and so full of grace. It's not full of anger or what ifs or you should. The answers are always, hey, you know, don't sweat the small stuff, pick your battles. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But that's what I want you to kind of think about now. If where you're at, whatever you're walking through, whatever age you are at in your life, what would the wisest and what would the best version of yourself say to you? All right. So I would love to hear your feedback. Definitely, if you're in my Facebook group, I have a Facebook group just for my podcast, My Imperfect Pursuit. If you're in that, I would love to hear your feedback on it, what you came up with. I would also, if you're not in there, request to join. You can find me on Facebook, just Keri Irvin, KeriIrvin. You can find me on there. And then there's Keri Irvin, My Imperfect Pursuit. You can request to join, get in the group, and I ask them questions. What kind of things do they want to hear? And then I get insight as to future podcast episodes. It's really good stuff. So get in there if you're not in there yet. If you are in there, share the feedback. What would the wisest and best version of yourself tell you? All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in.